Alright, so first thing, I did something really stupid today. I'm going to show it. Not because I might as well. I talk about everything else, right? So, okay. Yeah. Okay, so right here and here is a little bit bruised up. I don't know if you can tell in the lighting as much out here, but I decided to get my window AC unit out of the window. And since the last time I accidentally poured a bunch of water on my bed, I figured I'd go out the window. The snag was on the other side of the window is the waterfall to the pond. I've showed that before. And there's a big cactus right under my window. So what I did was I remembered to throw out a thank you to the universe that I would not impale myself on the cactus or fall. I did not take into consideration the possibility of dropping the AC unit on my foot. So I did that. And it was before I got the dogs walked, so that still hasn't happened, and it's not going to right now. I did skate 11 miles today, so there was that. I kind of figure it's the universe's way of telling me to stop worrying about the other stuff and get going on the damn writing project, right? And I am working on it, but I am deflecting a little bit when it comes to skating, running, walking the dogs. Like those have been taking the precedence. And even when I wake up at like this morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and just lay there thinking for a long time, and I could have been writing, but I didn't because I wasn't really ready to get up and move at that point in time. So I figured this is kind of the universe's way of telling me to fucking get my act in gear. And if I'm not going to write when I'm given the opportunity in the middle of the early morning hours and all that, like I do sometimes, right? But if I'm not going to take advantage of it regularly, and now I'm going to have to sit my ass down and can't deflect with the skating and running and walking the dogs. So, that one I might try here in a couple days anyway. But the running and skating, I'd say it's pretty safe. Those are just out until my knot at least goes down. I don't know how much of it you could actually see since there's a bit of a shadow right there, but it sucked. Probably after I'm done with this video, go home and put some more ice on it again, because that was not the highlight of my day. Okay, so what have I been thinking about? There's lots of things. Okay, so one thing, derailed. It's not completely gone. It's like, it's right there, just out of reach. The writing thing. Okay, so one thing I did do last night was I found myself wandering through more of my stuff that I've written before. And last night what I came across was the stuff that I did for the blog, for my website, that I had briefly and then let go because the financial restraints on that end, just not allowing it to happen at the moment. I will get it back, but for the time being, I do not have it. So, since I was looking at it, and before I started journaling all the time, like I've talked about the Twin Flame books, that I have like literally everything that on my healing process, like most of it's gotten documented in there at some level. Sometimes it takes a little while for me to really understand the message, or what the different elements were coming together to show me. But I've been, I've at least written almost every day since January 2024. So the blogs, I realized, before I started actually journaling all the time, I was doing the blog on my website, And so I had some things that I posted there, right? So then it was like, okay, so these are the stuff, still twin flame related, of course, because that's literally been the thing that's forcing me to do all the big healing work and dive into the things that I would not have previously done. Say, like doing a YouTube channel, right? It was the thing that said, suck it up, it's time to do something. It's time to start speaking, time to start using your voice, all this fun things, right? So, yeah, so I did it. And it's all because of this whole twin flame thing. So, the website, I talked about it quite a bit. I mean, it was did not have it up for very long, but I realized yesterday, it's like, hey, this is useful stuff to fill in the gaps on some of the stuff that, like, before I started journaling, right? And so I've talked a lot about, like, the different things that have come together over the time, and like I commented on a video I was watching earlier or something about the twin flame connection. Of course, it was a natural mystic video, and I don't remember exactly. It's talking about the feminine stepping into full embodiment and the masculine stepping into more of his role as well, more cognitively aware of it, right? So I'm watching this video, and she said something about, for the feminines, a lot of this work started back around 2019, 2020. Let's go back to 2019, okay? So, 2019 was the year that I left my ex-husband. For good. The final time. Okay, so from the practice round, I saw the different things that I needed to do to make happen in order to leave that situation completely. Like, I had to get my own separate bank account that he didn't know about, and have some of my, my job, my little delivery job that I had briefly. I had it so $75 each week would go into the joint account. Anything over that amount would go to my account. So from there, that was where I got my storage unit, right? So he wouldn't know about it. And then, once I got the storage unit, I started being, okay, so I had to take him to work most days because we only had one vehicle. Of 3 vehicles, we had one working suitably vehicle that we could, basically the transmission went out in the car and the truck tires needed to be replaced. But since we couldn't afford to do that because we just had to get the new truck or the new SUV, we only had that, right? So when we had the SUV, we're limited. And since I was, I had my delivery job, I needed the car during the day anyway. So I had to take him to work, drop him off, which was beneficial because it kept him out of my business. He couldn't sneak in on me packing stuff up and moving it out of the house. But then at the same time, I would work when he was home in the evenings. So most days. So I was packing all day and, then working in the evening time and all that stuff. And one of the things that happened, and I've talked about it a few times on here, is I was kind of going back and forth with something because, okay, I've had one of my biggest ongoing issues in my lifetime has been my tendency to be a little bit wishy-washy when it comes to, following through on anything. And while I knew I had to get out of that situation, there's still just all the different elements of what needed to happen, what was still yet to come in the whole situation. It was just still, I think I was getting ready to start packing stuff in the kitchen. And that was like the last of what I packed up, because I knew that he would notice as soon as I started getting that stuff, right? So I started with like the shed where he wasn't going to pay attention. And then just some odds and ends. And he knew I was getting rid of clothes and stuff, but I don't think he really paid much attention to it because a lot of it was just didn't fit anyway. So yeah, but I've talked about this before. There was a day or an evening or something where I was standing in the kitchen and I was leaning against the counter. And it was like there was this conversation being had at this other level, right? And I've mentioned this on here before, where it was like my counterpart was asking permission to marry somebody else. And I remember thinking, or like saying in this conversation, no, absolutely not. This is messy enough as it is with all the parties that are all currently involved in it. Anyway, we don't need to bring more people into the confusion and into the heartbreak of having to sort through this shit. So absolutely not. Right? And it was one of those things where it was like, I was completely aware of this conversation taking place in my head, but I wasn't completely aware of what was going on and what that further point was. And I feel like a part of it was to serve the purpose of making sure I was committed to staying focused on the forward momentum and actually doing what needed to be done, even when it got hard and, because it was a pain in the ass, y'all. Like the whole thing, this whole healing journey has been a pain in the ass. But it was like that conversation popping up in my head was like this kind of, essentially it was, life checking in with me to make sure I was really committed to getting out of there and getting into the situation in the space that I'm supposed to be in, right? 12-12. And so I mentioned that in the thing because she was talking about how a lot of this healing work and like the clearing some of this dense energy and like the junk that we've been carrying all throughout this journey started for the feminines in 2019. So it's like that was when I was really focused on getting out of there. But then there was also that conversation that came up and it's like nobody was there. My ex wasn't even in the room. I think I wanted to say it was earlier in the day because he wasn't there, but I won't commit to that part. But it was just like, once I put that piece of I don't want more people getting involved in this than is already complicated by, right? We don't need more confusion and other people to add into the layers of drama and whatnot in this whole process, for this whole purging thing that I've been doing. I don't know. It was just one of those things that was just kind of weird when like she drew attention to this particular span of time, and then I was thinking it's like that was right there in that time frame, right? And then of course 2020 is when I find out about the one band that he was in because of a different band that was going on tour that I wanted to see because I loved them for like forever, and then I found out about this other group then. But then as I was trying to make this make sense in my little comment even, I was thinking about the main band this guy was in back then. I kept hearing the name of the band, and I remember thinking it was kind of a clever name, and I liked it on that end, but I never put forth any effort into learning more about them or hearing them or anything, right? So then that wasn't until like way later when I found out about the other band, which, previously that band, the one that is not, he's a part of, but he's not the head of, right? So like that band is the one that essentially the five guys from the Knowing my senior year is that the band that I heard of him through, right? And one of these days, this will be a lot easier when I actually am willing to say names, right? But until then, because we're not there yet, until then, we'll just speak very around about it, I guess. But anyway, so on the part with the 5 guys, right? So, I talked about how I had the vision the one morning where it was like I saw myself in this other space trying to explain to these 5 guys the connection points, right? And I was thinking that car was over here earlier. I don't know why. It's back now. It's like me. It just spends a ridiculous amount of time here for some reason. Anyway, so one of the things that I discovered with this whole connection, right, is that the 5 guys, okay, what I was thinking of was the 5 guys, right? So this is separate from the vision, and now my stomach's making noises again, so great. One day, several months ago, I don't know if it was this year or last year, I just know it was a while back, I drew dots, 5 dots to represent the different people in the band. And then I was thinking about the chords connecting them together, right? So it's like, okay, so the first guy being connected to all 4 dots, right? And then the next guy is connected to all the same dots, but since this one already has a chord established in my picture, this would be easier if I had paper. I don't have paper right now, I don't think. Actually, yes, I do. It's probably under my seat. Hey, hot damn, a notebook. Okay. This notebook has seen better days. Now, if I got a pen, that'll be the bigger question. Nuts. It's always something. Oh, pen in the door. I have weird shit everywhere. Yes. Okay. So, flippy. Okay. So, my dots, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So, I was thinking about the connections, right? So, from this dot, this person is connected to all these other dots, right? Well, since, man, excuse my little wiry haired doodle there. Anyway, so since that one's already got a connection, right, then we connect this one to the next points. And then I was just kind of, okay, so this one's got the connection to these 2. So let's connect him also to these guys. And then, of course, so it was like, so yeah, it's really bad. But the idea, right, was, okay, so you form the connecting points around all these, or for these connections, right, the chords between these 5 people, and it's essentially a pentagram, right? I mean, if you want, you got to round it out and everything, but whatever. But, like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, huh. It's like, that means something. So then, this vision that I had, probably like August, I think, I've talked about it on here before. So I had this other vision where I saw me trying to explain this idea to the guys in the group, right? And in the vision, I didn't have anything to write with. So what I did instead was lay down on the floor. So I have the twin flame at my head, the 2 that I mentioned that there was a slightly like one-off kind of connection that when I was trying to understand that, because the live stream concert that I paid to experience during the whole COVID thing, it was like, I was watching it, and as I was watching it, it was like, there is something here for me, right? And I was kind of like honing in on like each of the band members, right? And it's like, that one's not it, that one's not it. And then there were like two that was like, there's something there, but it's not quite it, right? But then there was the other one where it was just kind of like, I mean, honestly, it was like my mind just kind of went blank. It's like, like, yes, but also, yeah. But what I was realizing with the two that were kind of like the one off, it was like, when I was trying to figure that out, I went to the gym, right? So I was going to Planet Fitness, and I get on the treadmill after I've posed this thought of what is this connection, right? Because now that I'm aware of the twin flame connection, that one makes sense. But what are these other two that are like close but not quite there? And what came up was I got on the treadmill, and I had it on, and I was getting ready to step onto it, right? But I was not there yet. It was speeding up. So I'm getting ready to step on it, and I look up, and just suddenly I feel like I'm in this other space with these two guys that are like the one off kind of a thing. It's like that connection, and like I see us, and we're just like in this space staring at each other. And and they were looking really confused, and like I just looked at them, and then I hear myself say, "What, you don't recognize your sister because you've never met her in the physical before?" Right? And it was just kind of like one of those things, like, okay, so there's this closer connection with that, right? Because this sibling type connection, right? This energetic level, all this weird fun stuff, right? So, right, so that's where that came in. So for this other demonstration where I'm laying on the floor to demonstrate this whole point, the brother types are at my hands as they're stretched out, and the other two are at my feet, and the twin flame is at my head. And basically, I'm laying there on the floor, and I'm looking up at him, right? And like he's just doing his thing, not really aware of what's going on. But the more I'm focused on the healing stuff, making sense of the connection aspect of it, listening to his music, right? So, so I've talked a lot about how, with all my Cancer placements, I am heavily ruled by the moon, right? So on the flip side, him as a Leo is sun, right? And, and of course my my Venus sign is Leo as well. So then I start making these connections. It's like the more I tune into my heart space and start living from that space. It does a really douchey sound in car. I hate it when they sound like that. Anyway, where was I? Okay. So I'm ruled by the moon. I'm looking up. Backtrack on the one part for the time being. I'm basically focused on the sun, right? Up. And, he's in his spotlight, if you will, and he's got his own stuff going on, and I'm just watching. And somewhere along the line, as I'm looking up, he starts kind of tuning in to what's going on. Like he's suddenly aware that something is shifting, right? So as he will be, and going back to the as above, so below thing, right? And the yin yang piece where, essentially, okay, there is a piece of the light in the dark, a piece of the dark in the light. We already carry a piece of each other all the time in this connection, right? So, so I'll find it again. Give me a second. right? So as I'm staring up, it's kind of that sort of flutter in the chest is the idea that comes to mind immediately. So it's like suddenly there's this awareness that something else is happening, right? That you can't particularly, what do you do with that other than just you have this intuitive insight that something is going on? So he starts like meditating more and tuning in, right? And of course, as he starts doing that, okay, my focusing up. I've talked on here a lot about how I've always overly identified with the feminine aspect of myself, and until you heal it, that aspect is in distortion, right? So it took me realizing that I already had this, the masculine aspect of myself, if you will. The frame was already within. So I start moving more from the space of, I do have the capacity to do these things. I don't need somebody to speak for me. I don't need somebody to act on my behalf and make decisions on my behalf. It's like when I was under the conditioning that I needed somebody outside of myself to save me, or to, that I was essentially my father's property until I was my husband's property, that kind of bullshit idea. And then my father basically fed me to the wolves, if you want to look at it that way, because the situation that I ended up in was shit, right? It was a toxic pile of garbage. But for whatever reason, my dad wouldn't say anything about not liking him. My brother said he didn't feel like he had the right to say anything about not liking him because he was in the Air Force and wasn't around, so he felt like he didn't have any space to say it because we weren't that close at that point in time. Now, for why my dad didn't say anything, my brother posed the possibility that you didn't know how I was ever going to respond to anything because I could be a bit volatile. Which I'm not going to argue that point because I can be a hothead. Runs in the family. But that said, when you're operating from the space of believing that you need somebody to speak for you and that you are somebody's property until you are somebody else's property, right? It doesn't lend for the space of making my own decisions, because I knew that was the situation I was going into with my ex, that I knew that was not for me. But I also knew that I had to, one of the things that I set out to learn on this journey of life this time around was to understand why people get into these bad relationships and feel stuck and they can't get out of them. And I got that, right? I figured out a whole lot about that. And now I'm trying to operate from that space. But this whole twin flame connection was essential for me to be able to, start really doing the work that needed to be done. It was like the thing that required me to step up and get my shit together. And I've talked about when I was walking down the aisle, it was like, I needed my dad or my brother to say something, and they didn't. My mother said something, but that didn't matter because she was always trying to live vicariously through me. So it's just like, I don't care what she says, right? And then my best friend, who was also like she was like my mom away from my mom, is what I realized much later. She said something. She said she was willing to drive the getaway car if I needed it. But because of that piece, that she was essentially my mom away from my mom, her opinion, or what she said, didn't matter either. It was I was only able to receive it if it was from my dad or my brother, because I had been conditioned into this belief that I was somehow their property, right? I was my dad's property until I was my husband's property, but my brother could stand in because that whole, because he's the son, he could have a say-so in that matter as well, right? So, yeah. So when they didn't say anything, I'm walking down the aisle, and like everything in me, and like, okay, I've talked about how I had my entrance interview for seminary the day of my wedding, and I went to it. My thought was, they'll know I'm serious. The truth was, I knew if I had to sit with myself that day, I would not have been able to go through with it. So I was trying to stay detached from myself so that I would go ahead and go through with it. Because the ones they needed to excuse me from it weren't there to say anything, right? And that was the key on the conditioning component end of things. So I talk a lot and forget to breathe. And my fingers cramping again. Okay, so once I am in this toxic situation and realize that it was really hard to get out of, right? So why is it hard for you to get out of this space that is clearly toxic and that you never should have been in? Oh, before that, walking down the aisle, that my intuitive voice was saying, essentially my heart was saying, don't do this. You don't even like him, let alone love him. Do not do this. And that was the voice I couldn't listen to, right? Because if I spent the day just by myself, I was going to have to listen to that voice. So instead, I distracted myself with going to the seminary entrance interview under the guise of, they'll know I'm serious and that I really want this. But completely trying to dodge sitting with myself and get out of the situation I knew I didn't want to be in at some level. And it's like, that was a very adamant voice on the whole thing too. And, this little meek, distorted, feminine version of me was, you're just kind of like, I have to. Right? I didn't know why. I just knew I had to. It's like, I don't understand it, but without their permission, I can't get out of this. Even though everything in me is screaming at me, do not do this, I couldn't do that because my conditioning had me conditioned. So, yeah. There's a piece I was meandering, or I started to meander, and I pulled it back, and then I lost the other point. But that was 2012, right? So in 2012, if you recall, which you probably don't, I have talked about it in another video, that 2012 was the year that I met my ex. It was very short, and it was very fast moving, right? The whole love bomb thing and all that crap, right? So it was like just fast and should never have happened. And I've talked about on here several times too. It's like the biggest thing that I think that was supposed to happen from that situation was that I met his son, who was named Tyler. And Tyler, being the friend that I kept having the sense I needed to reach out to. So this kid was like a constant reminder of this nudge for me to check in with my friend that I never did. And then he died, right? So, when I met the kid, it was a little before he turned 4. And I remember, like, one of the first things I said to him, he shared a name with one of the coolest people I knew. And, it was like there was always that point of, you need to contact him. But also, I can't do that. Why couldn't I do that? Because I had that knowing back in high school, right? That I knew that Tyler was going to die in her mid-30s, and it would be his death that brought everybody back together for a time. But I thought, because of the next piece, where I would be 40 before I started making sense of anything, meant that I was somehow responsible for his death. And I can't really, I mean, you can think whatever you want on that whole path. I just know that's the assumption that I made with the little bit of information that I was given at that point in time. Now, his death was absolutely essential in me getting to the point where I started to figure things out for myself at 40, right? So because of his death, I got to a point where I realized that whatever was on the other side of death, whatever I was carrying that I would not have owned up to had we had a conversation in person, it's like, on the other side of death, he already knows all that. Whatever's on the other side, he already knows that. So I just started writing him letters and talking about like the shit with my cousin that, these, lies that had been spread about me my entire life, right? That I was just carrying this burden of, my family shaming me and just assuming that everything the boy had said was accurate, like boys don't lie or some shit, which, I mean, but their way of dealing with it was to make me feel bad, not actually find out what happened all the way through or anything. Just believe what was said and leave it at that, and amp up the guilt and shame for me, right? So when Tyler died, it's like, he already knows this stuff. There's no point in lying about it anymore, because I would not have owned up to it. Going back to that, the deal with my uncle, right? So after the deal with my cousin, there was this time where I don't know where my aunt was at that moment. She might have been in the other room with my brother, I guess. I was in the new family room on the house, and I would have been like 9, so it was like the next year. And so we're looking at 92, right? I don't even know what was going on exactly. I think my uncle and I were playing. It was like he was taking something from me, like a blanket or a pillow or something that I had in my lap. And when he did, he rubbed his entire forearm against my crotch. And I just kind of like did the deer in the headlights and panic kind of thing, right? And then my mom, who did see it because she was in the kitchen, called me over to confirm what she saw. But because my experience said I would be the one that got in trouble, because the deal with my cousin was I got in trouble, I shut down. It's like I immediately went into protective mode. It's like when she asked if he touched me, I was like, no. Because I was panicked, right? Because this little 9-year-old me that had this experience where all hell broke loose in my family. The hell breaking loose started with my great-grandfather passing away. And then my dog had to be put down. And then I almost drowned in the ocean. So it was like a whole series of events leading up to the shit with my cousin deciding to try to enlighten me. And so like all of that stuff leading into me being this little kid that's just had this grown-ass man rub his fucking arm across my crotch, I freaked, right? And then I was afraid I was going to get in trouble, and I didn't want to get in more trouble. And it's like, as it was, the situation with my cousin resulted in all hell breaking loose, because that was something that followed me around all the way through high school, right? And as I've said before, it came back up at 30 and came back up again at 35 because I had encounters with 2 of the bullies, right, in the later years. And the second bully, the one at 35, my mom was buying some puzzles off of his wife, because I had 3 daughters. And I was recently back, 35. 35 was the preparation round. So I had left Alabama in December 2017 and did not have the storage unit, did not have the bank account, all that stuff. I was just packing stuff and putting it in the front room. And so then when my ex found out that I was getting ready to move, he went and stole stuff out of my boxes and hid it around the house. So that was one of those things where I had to, I knew if I was going to get out of there for real, I had to have a storage unit outside of the space, right? So my stuff was not around where he could get into it. So, yeah, so from that trip, and that was also where a bunch of the custody stuff was going on. That was where Tyler ended up in a coma in May, I think. And then July 19th, he passed away. And there was a time in June where he was awake and talking, and I got to visit him with another one of my friends from Drumline. She's down in Texas, but she said she was up and she really wanted to go see him, and would I go with her? And I was excited because it was an opportunity to go see him without my mom involved in it, right? So it's like, I even, I think I've talked on here several times too about like the funeral, right? So I'm in this space with, it makes sense that I was local, that I would go to this funeral with my parents, right? But at the same time, when I was around, I passed the guy that I dated in high school and early college, sophomore year. And, the refresher on him was he was the one I knew I wasn't going to marry, but at the same time, he was safe in the world I existed in, where I was getting made fun of by everybody. He was at least a safe space that was not making fun of me, right? That was not giving me hell about all this other shit. Like, I think he was completely oblivious to what was being said about me because he was a grade behind me. But, it's like everybody else that was friends with us that I was in my grade, everybody in my grade knew about it, right? About this bullshit. One of them, which was actually one of that ex's, it seemed like they were better friends, I think, than they actually were. But I mean, the guy I dated made fun of that dude all the time. Everybody did, right? But that was the dude that was trying to keep this whole rumor alive in my entire school career. And going again to that piece of where I could always see the wound people were operating from, it's like when I could see that this guy was essentially deflecting to me, bring all the negative attention to me to get it off of him, I just turned it on me further, right? So yeah. Anyway, how the fuck did I do this? I never know where these are gonna go. All I knew was I wanted to mention the damn foot thing. Anyway, it goes where it's gotta go. It's just is. So yeah. Okay, Tyler. Going back to Tyler being the piece, the knowing that he was going to die in our mid-30s, then he did. The knowing that I was going to be 40 before I started making sense of things. And essentially, it was Tyler's death that gave me the space to be able to heal enough to choose myself when it came to getting out of that connection with my ex that I did marry and shouldn't have. So it's like the knowings that I had in high school, my senior year, I thought it meant that it was my fault that Tyler died. But what it was his death was the thing that freed me up because it gave me space to process some of this early trauma that I'd just been carrying because I was afraid to put it down, right? Because it's like it kept following me. And so it was one of those things that essentially, I'm just seeing me like carrying this baggage with a death grip because I was afraid to put it down and let it go because I didn't know what would happen to it or to me if I tried to let it go. All right. So yeah, like that was the whole key on his death was I was supposed to check in with him. I think if I had checked in with him, then perhaps the purpose of the thing would have been just to actually, show him that somebody cared. Because it's one of those things, it's like, I've mentioned a lot that I was afraid to reach out to him when I kept getting the nudges that I needed to because I was afraid my sadness would ooze into his life. But what I didn't consider was maybe he had his own shit going on and maybe he just needed the reminder that somebody did give a shit. Right? So anyway, so because of his death, I was able to set down some of that stuff that I was just afraid to let go of for my entire grade school career and all that fun stuff, right? So, where from there? Okay, now how did I get there from the earlier start point, which, I told the former stepson that he shared the name with one of the coolest people I knew. I don't remember. I like to think that I'm getting better about not jumping all over the place all the time, but it's just following it and seeing where it goes. And then realizing that there's still some things that maybe need to be processed out or maybe just need the reminder of how far I've come on this whole crazy ass process. Oh, I know what it was. Okay. 2012. I meet the kid and I'm reminded of Tyler because I've been getting these nudges to reach out to Tyler, right? And oh, my foot itches. It hurts so bad. I really wish I didn't do that. Oh man, there's that second toe. It's like all nice and swollen. It just like started itching. It's like I think I was itching the toe next to it, and it's just oh how sad. Anyway, so Tyler. Okay, that was when I first heard of the concept of twin flames, right? So 2012, I hear this thing, I think it's Tyler, and I feel like it's just one of those connections that essentially is supposed to be an unrequited love thing because I can't reach out to him, right? Because I have too much blocks and I am afraid that my sadness will ooze into his life, and I thought he was living his dream, so I didn't want to do that at all. And so I never connected with him, right? But this twin flame thing comes up and it's like, I was just pretty sure that it was him, just accepted that, and, glossed over it thinking that's just not, it can't be. Because this is just that situation's not meant to be, right? And because I was still in the space of trying to run from that connection because I didn't want my sadness to contaminate his life, I just wouldn't do anything with it, right? So it's just the twin flame thing. It becomes this concept that I hear of, and I just, I'm trying to like shrug it off. It's like, no, that can't be, right? But yeah. Trying to meander back. Okay, so something that happened a couple days ago. I saw all these recent posts on social media that he was a part of. It was like some a little party thing to celebrate something the group was doing, right? So I made note that there were a couple points where he just seemed kind of distant from the space. And I remember waking up at like, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's like I had also been in this space of this event that was going on, right? And seeing the disconnection firsthand. And it made me think, or it made me question the possibility of him leaving that space, right? Like walking away from it and choosing to follow other paths, right? And so I talk on here a lot about my visions and all these fun things, right? So it's like, oh, the things you can't prove any evidence of anything, and it's basically you just talking out your ass, right? It's like, I don't know what it is. I'm just gonna talk about what my experience of that situation was. In this case, I saw the possibility of him walking away from this other group. That essentially there was the seed, right? I was the seed that was planted. They were the energies that were, connecting to help give me life, I guess. Maybe I'll get back to that point if I remember it. But anyway, so that, like, I had this really, like, I even wrote about it. It's like I was questioning, and it's like, is he thinking about leaving this space? What is this? And, it's like I heard me talking to him, right? Or it's like we were having this conversation in this other space. And I said that I support him in whatever decision he makes, and it's like I could see this other timeline or this other existence where he wasn't doing this other thing. It's like, okay, but what would you do in the meantime? Or what would you do instead? And it was kind of like a focus on like more of the teaching end of things. But I don't know, it was just a really weird space to have the information of, but not, we're not having actual conversations, I can assure you of that. So at this other level where we're communicating, and where we've always been communicating, because, I mentioned the story with the if it was okay for him to get married. And I said, absolutely not, because why do we need to bring more people into this chaos than are already involved, right? But it was the means of me getting my act in gear and moving forward on the getting out of that connection with my ex for real, right? So it's like, there's always been these little communication bits that, like even back to the guy I dated in high school. It's like, I knew that this person has brown hair and brown eyes, partly because like of the connections. Yeah, because I mean that was my type, I guess. I don't know. It's like some of the most important people to me fit that brown hair, brown eyes appearance, right? So it was like early on I knew that that was going to be what he had. And I think it hit me because it's me communicating in the energies, y'all. It's like reading what's going on without actually having the specific information, I guess. Like, okay, like going back to when I was 4 and watching An American Tail with my cousin. Yeah, the one that would eventually make things a living nightmare for me. And we were watching this movie, and the 2 little kid mice are, like singing this little love song, this Somewhere Out There. And I just remember being completely like entranced by the song and just like the energy of it, and just like, this is like all there is, right? And I've talked about how I kind of see that as my counterpart checking in before he incarnated, right? And then like the various things that I've pieced together with the age gap and everything. And again, I can't confirm that right now. Like, I am not willing to go, looking around for information I can get on the internet or whatever. It's like I'm following the intuitive hits at this point in time, journaling about them, and then we'll see what happens whenever we do actually meet. But the energetic piece, the reading of the energies and making sense of the things that I piece together because of this, right? Okay, so and on that end, the seeing him detached in this event space, that's kind of where that came from, right? And I can't know what the surrounding event or surrounding circumstances for his response in that event. I can just see what I saw, and make that connection that it seems somehow detached. But anyway, so that's what came up. And like, I remember the biggest thing was just, I guess, sending back the message, if you want to go that route, of I support you in whatever you decide. But that's one of those things. It's like, I don't want to be a part of that decision, right? For the thing that, like we meet and then he decides to leave this group or something. It's like, ooh, that'd be a shitty place to be in. I don't like that at all. So, yeah, so I wasn't interested in that, right? So, yeah, but anyway, like, there was just felt weird about it. But I also think that, okay, as we are connected and, like, okay, so something that it just occurred to me that there's like a cross in these trees, or a T in these trees in front of me, and now one of them looks like, I don't know, like either a raccoon or an otter, just the shape of the space in between the branches and the leaves. This is how my mind works, y'all. This is why it is a difficult thing to. This is why I've struggled with using my voice, because I know when I start speaking, at some point I'm going to start sounding really crazy. And I'd say this video is pretty good on supporting that piece. But there again, reading energies is this thing that I do, and I can't not do it. So that's where I'm at. Anyway, I wondered if, because I've seen I'm going to call them other timelines, where I've probably focused more than necessary on the sadness of being together and then he goes on tour. And I was kind of wondering if maybe it was connected with that thing that has been coming to mind a lot lately. I'm not gonna lie. Just like that idea of finally having the connection that you've been looking for forever, and then this other thing is a thing, and now he's leaving again, right? That kind of thing. But at the same time, when I was with my ex in Alabama, there was a day that I remember thinking to myself, maybe just the person that I am, it would be better if whatever next relationship I have, if the person spends some time not with me, right? So like they go do something else for work or whatever, which a tour would, fit that, right? So it's like I remember essentially setting this intention that whatever's next, at some point I'm going to have time to myself where I can regroup and sort through the chaos of just the energies that I'm collecting the information about all the time, right? Anyway, so last night, it was back to that whole point, but I remember thinking, I was like, at the end of the day, I'm going to support whatever he wants to do, right? His life, his decisions, it is essential that he is the one that is okay with the decisions that he makes, and it's not connected to any kind of relationship, even if it's just this 5D mystery space. And are you ever actually going to meet? Guess we'll find out one day or not. Right? My rearview mirror is groaning, and I can get rid of the sun there. It's just it's just there. Anyway, so yesterday we were thinking, it's like, I don't want to be the thing that would cause him to walk away from something that he loved doing, right? It's like that sucks. That whole idea of wanting somebody to do something differently with their life, I mean, essentially making decisions for how they're going to live, that's not fun. That's not fair. So, I just kind of had this, again, this other space that I was operating from, where I was just thinking, it's like, I'm going to love you whatever the fuck you decide you want to do. What makes you happy is what you have to do. This is not something that I want any part of deciding yes or no just because it makes me sad that you go on tour or whatever. It's like that wouldn't, I don't want to be that person. And also, I think it'd be really kind of cool to be able to be a part of this world that he also is able to exist and have this life in. And I was thinking, it's like, essentially, the person that he is in that group, that's just another mask, right? This is just one of the masks we wear. Like, one of the masks I wear is doing this whole freaking YouTube thing, right? This isn't, it took me a lot of getting over myself to go that route. But, and like all the things that I talk through on here in this space, it's like, it's not made up. It's actually stuff that I'm working through. But at the same time, this isn't the full expression of who I am. It's like bitching about my family. I mean, healing from the shit that they've put on me to have to heal from. It's like, that's just, I mean, essentially stories that, it's like this reference point that is me in this lifetime, the divine reference point. It's essentially feeding back to the collective, these things led to this, right? And so then once I got into this situation, these things are what helped me get out of it, right? So all that information is, stuff that's feeding back into the collective, so essentially once you learn it, it affects everybody because we're all connected, right? So, yes. Okay, so how did I do that part? Right, so like whatever, it's just any of this stuff, it's like any of the things that we go through in this space, this earthly plane, it's all just divine reference point. It's sharing our insights of our lives with the collective so others can learn from these experiences as well. And we have to decide things for ourselves, right? It's like essentially the mask that he wears with this group of people. It's not that it's not who he is. It's like there's actually there's truth in what's being told, what's being lived out through the experience with that mask, but it's still not the full expression. But it is an important one, and on that end, that's one of those things that it's like, if it's not, if you don't really feel like you're meant to walk away from something, then don't. If you do, then do, right? It's like we've bought into these stories that, the only purpose we serve on this planet is we're supposed to work our lives away and struggle to survive. What kind of fucking existence is that? It's like the one that the current government situation wants to continue perpetuating, but the less and less of us that agree to exist in that space and start walking away from it because we want to have families, we want to do things, we want to create based on like whatever we're inspired to create, right? And okay, so I talk about that animal apothecary deck a lot. And the flow card, right? So, or not flow, the abundance card, right? It's the bowhead whale, and it talks about the importance of being in flow. When you step into the flow, you damn planes. You channel, and channeling is allowing the divine to express itself through you, right? So with this idea, like whatever you feel inspired to create, like let's use this oracle deck as an example, right? The animal apothecary deck. She feels inspired, so she creates this thing. I feel drawn to this deck because my friend talked me in, or said something about I was going to get into cards, and then I went crazy getting into cards, and then I just loved collecting cards because there's like the different pictures, the different messages, just the different things that you can get from other people's creations, right? So she was inspired she had to be in some kind of flow state to put this deck together, right? So because she was willing to create this thing, I am able to refer back to it a lot. And I refer back to it a lot. I think that's probably the one I talk about the most. But if you think about that, like with anything you could create, whether it's music, art, writing, photography, like kind of just roughly things that I have been interested in along the way to some degree or another, right? Just the things that you become passionate about, the things that you really love to do. It's like follow the bliss, follow joy, and follow love. Because that's what makes life worth living, right? But if you're bound to this idea of working 40 to 50 hours a week or better, and giving all your money away to some assholes at the top that aren't willing to share with anybody else because they want to choke the flow and, make the rest of us suffer. Yeah. I don't remember exactly what angle I was going at, but I just kind of wandered with it. So, yeah, but like the things that you create, whether maybe it's a song, and then you get somebody hears the song and they feel something in that energy. Something in that energy connects with what they are going through. And I'm going there because I've talked about listening to especially his music over and over and over again. Because it's communicated things with me that I wasn't even aware of, right? It's like it was a means of guiding me through something I was going through. And like books that I've gotten into, like the When God Writes Your Love Story, When God Writes Your Life Story. I got really into that idea in undergrad. And what it did was lead me to set this intention that was something I wanted. What would the story be if the divine was expressing itself through me? If I let God write my life story, what would that look like? And my life story, right? And my career path, like all these things, the things that I, at 40, I got the nose ring and the lip ring. It set the intention that I would never again work in a job that asked me to be anything less than 100% who I am. What does that leave? If you pose the intention, universe will teach you. It'll show you what things will bring you joy, what you're essentially here to do. So like, I've always kind of known the writing thing, right? I had to take a poetry, or I had to participate in a club in middle school. There was something we did back then, I don't know. And one of the ones that I picked was poetry. And I got really into it. And then I was enjoying doing this thing where I was writing these little poems and drawing little doodles with them that were kind of going along with a theme. And then the bully got in the way and squashed it. And I got really, it was the day that he came to pick his little sister up from my mom. And he, I didn't know he was there. And when I walked into the room, he did the same thing where he just looked at me like he knew something about me, and everything crumbled. Right? And I think that was the same day that I had my my suicide attempt. That was probably the closest I got, and it was like a series of actively thinking and trying to figure out how I was going to force myself to do it. And one of the things that I did was I took that little poetry journal that I was so proud of and that I loved so much, and I just stabbed big X's through all the pages, and then threw it in the closet and didn't want anything to do with it. It was like one of those composition notebooks, and I squished it up and, was destroying it, but yet wouldn't let myself get rid of it for some reason. I'm not sure if I might still have it. There's the chance that I might have burned it with a bunch of the other stuff that I burned along the way, just to release it and get it out of my system on that end, because that was a heavy thing that I went through. And I did have that book for 25 years or something. But yeah, then something happens, somebody tries to piss on my existence, and so to lash out at my existing, I tried to destroy this thing that I was trying to create, right? And then it's like, that's one of those things. It's like all the ways that I've been hurt along the way and turned on myself because I had been trying to do something, been trying to create something, and then something else came up and got in the way of that, right? Caused that interference. And then, next thing I know, I'm struggling with all this self-sabotage and procrastination, afraid to do anything because I don't want my creations, like the mama cardinal, right? So she destroyed her egg because she deemed the nest wasn't safe. And then she abandoned the nest, right? So for me to destroy my poetry journal because it wasn't safe, essentially, that was, I'm not saying that it makes sense, but at the same time, it's kind of a hot mess to get there. And then to realize all these little things that contributed to me trying to block myself from doing anything because I was essentially letting myself agree with the shit that was coming at me, right? So yeah. Oh, but so I have the books came up and I got really into that idea, and then and then I'm setting the intentions that I want the love story that God has to write for me. What would that look like if I let God lead the way on all this? And then suddenly I'm making these connections with this thing that happened when I was 4, and all these different things that have come up along the way to, essentially, it's there's little pins that I've left to as reminders that this is important, and we're going to come back to this one day. This is going to make a lot more sense. Like the twin flame stuff, that only makes sense to me now. Okay, all this stuff leading up to this only makes sense now because of the other things that I remember being this little 4-year-old kid wearing these little teeny jeans and this white blouse looking thing, and completely caught up in what was going on TV or on this movie, and I was 4, right? But then that wasn't alone the thing. That was a song that really took hold, and this idea, this feeling of love, right? And this awareness that there is something more, this idea of that we would have our own lives and learn whatever we came here to learn, but then one day there would be this big, amazing, beautiful love story, right? That was something that was hugely important to me, right? And then, okay, so the things that came up along the way. Okay, if he was in fact 5 years younger than me, which again, I've talked about the pieces that make me think that is the case. One of those pieces is the fact that dragons, have always been kind of important for my, where's my amethyst out? He used to Shiva Lingam being out. I'm not even sure when that one came out. Anyway. So dragons, of course, my school, my town, the high school mascot was a dragon. And of course, I did marching band. So in 2000, we did the show Year of the Dragon, because it was the year of the dragon. So, and then another thing, because it's the mascot, when we do this little band gift exchange thing, it was, we got, I think, what was it, Secret Pal or something they called it. You get anybody in the band, it's just kind of distributed randomly. You get somebody, and there's a little list of things that they like, right? So if it's candy or a drink or whatever, they'll put some things like that they like, And, you know, you just get whatever to, you know, essentially give them a good day, right? Before going into the band contest, right? Because it was always fun getting these little secret pal things and, you know, getting whatever, whether it's the candy or the drink or stuffed animals. I got a few of those, you know, but like, because of this whole dragon thing, I got a stuffed dragon at one point. You know, so it's just like little odds and ends, but it's something that, because that was the mascot, we also got into the, like, we had the little dragon statues that we came across, I think at like Hallmark or something, and it's like, those are kind of cute. And then we end up with a couple of those, right? So it's like dragons were like a recurring thing, recurring idea. So then, if we go to the the stupidness with the momentary dating app post the divorce, right? So I talked about wanting to see what was out there, and I had already committed my love life to the, well, I mean, okay, I had not committed the universe, or my love life to the universe as I did in 2023, but I committed to that idea of, I really liked the idea of letting God write the story, right? And because of these books that I read. So, going back to 2020, where I'm considering wanting to be ready to have this idea, be open to like relationships again, right? So I get on the dating app just to see what's out there, which is a terrible idea, by the way. And I met my last two exes on dating apps. The first one worked out okay until it didn't, and the second one was just, that was a hot mess from the beginning. You get what you paid for, and it was on a free fucking app. So anyway, when I decided to get on the app, it was, you know, there was the question, what is the youngest you are willing to date? So 2020, what was I, like 36 or 7 when I was at this, you know, whole thing. I was thinking, it's like, okay, what I know of like psychology and brain development and all this stuff, it's like, I don't think I could realistically date somebody more than 5 years younger than me, right? So this was this thing that I set because of this freaking dating app parameter that needed to be set. But then when I'm thinking about it later, it's like, okay, well, if we consider that with this other stuff that I just mentioned and add in, I was born in 1983, 5 years younger than me would essentially be 1988-ish, right? 1988 was the year of a dragon. It's like, okay. So that appears like it might be connected too, right? So then, yeah. Anyway, there's been a bunch of stuff that's kind of like that. It's just like these little details, things that I have set the intention on, like letting God write my love story, this whole thing. And, you know, then seeing where we go from there. You know, and like there's this other thing, like there was a song, Stephen Curtis Chapman, it's called 11/6/64, and he wrote it about his wife, and, you know, because that's their birthday, right? So, you know, of course, that the whole song is talking about when he was this little kid and wondering and all these things. It's like, if you're making the decision to turn this whole thing over to the universe or God to lead, then that brings a whole lot of things together to be weaved together, right? Woven together, whatever. Yeah. Okay, now how did I do that? I don't know, going back, just the whole twin flame thing, even, it's like the stuff that I've set the intention for, and just the different things that have come up along the way and that seem to be moving me in a certain direction. It's like, this makes perfect sense, even if I sound crazy talking about it, because hey, this is still somebody that I've barely met. Right? And that was like a one-time meet and greet type thing that, you know, is like 12 minutes and done. And that only because he showed up late and gave me more time. So, yeah. But anyway, like, because I wasn't at that point, okay, I tried to be in a good space going into it, y'all. And it's like, okay, so Do the Bartman is like my, kind of my go-to happy song. It's like, if I have anything to shake out of my system, that's something that I can listen to a couple times. It puts me in a better mood. And I know it's silly, and I don't know why that one. It's just, it came up somewhere along the line, and then I got really into it again. And it's like, hey, this is fun. And this is like, why not, right? So it was this thing that, just, I don't know, it was just a silly thing. So, yeah, so that was a song that I listened to several times. And then I had this panic moment because I didn't think that my microphone was going to work for some reason. And then like then he's like late to this thing. And then it's like everything just like all at once started going wrong. And it's just like freaking out. It was like, so when it came to the thing, it was like, yeah, I'm clearly not ready to be, to have anybody aware of me that's going to want to see me as worthwhile. But yeah, it was like, trying all these things to be in the good space and to, you know, to have the pieces brought together to stay in that good space, and then it just crumbles at the last minute. It's like, fuck. Is what it is. You know, and yeah, even that, like, okay, going back to that whatever you create thing, right? So I watch these tarot readings. I'm slowing down on them here lately, but there for a while I was kind of obsessive about them. You know, and I've talked a lot about the one with Gem Goddess where she was talking about black dogs are important and mean it's about time. I've talked about that one on here several times, so I'm going to skip that one at the moment. There was another one. Well, there's been a few. I don't remember if it was Gem Goddess or Kino Tarot that was talking about they are aware of your energy and they've like encountered it multiple times at different levels, but haven't fully. It's like they're see, I don't remember how she said it, but essentially the point was, it's like the energy is brushed past, and then kind of, you know, they're like, there's something familiar, there's something going on, right? And if you go back to this idea of things happening in this other space, right? But going back to that point on the things you create, right? So these tarot readings that, you know, sometimes some of them have been like a year after they were originally made, I come across it, and then it has a message that's relevant to what I'm going through. So it's like, right? So it's like, you never know what's going to happen with anything you create and put out there. But the universe knows everything that exists, to, you know, so that it can utilize. So then, you know, say somebody shows up with some kind of information and somebody else says, prove it. This is like the ways we create. That is very much so the universe can prove it, right? So it's like all the things you do. It's like, even if you don't know why you're doing it, like the YouTube thing, like how I talk about things on here. It's like, I know I talk about a lot of the same stories over and over again, but, you know, it's been to heal various layers of it. And I don't know when somebody is going to come across something that was on point for what they're going through, and it's actually worthwhile to them, even if it's years after the fact, right? It's like whatever is out there, it's kind of essentially the Akashic records as we are creating it, right? So there's like all these things that we've created, and then it's available for others to tap into. Huh. Interesting. And I had another brief momentary thought in there. Yeah, I've talked a lot about this whole YouTube experience and, you know, like the purpose of me doing all these videos, right? Like, it started because he had to be in a spotlight for me to find him, but how would he ever come to find me if I didn't start doing more than I'd ever done, right? So I started doing the YouTube thing. And then it was essentially my healing process to navigate through a whole bunch of stuff that, you know, I've cried through a lot of things on here. Came real close today. Don't think I fully committed to the crying thing. Yeah, if it was necessary, I would have. But there's been so many that I've cried through, you know, and like, I feel like those serve a purpose. And for now, if the only purpose that I see of it is it's no longer in my system, it's still no longer in my system, right? So it's out there for somebody else to find, and it's out of my system, which is important, right? So because of all of this stuff being out of my system, then I've started making more connections with those other things and making, you know, like, oh my God, this twin flame stuff is like all over the place, right? But like the whole reason I started the channel was because I wanted him to eventually be able to find me. But at the same time, with my whole life experience being the person that would literally duck into various bathrooms just to not be seen by people, it takes a lot to work that out of your system, right? So like all the dreams that I've mentioned that have taken place, at least partly taken place in a bathroom. And it's like, okay, but why am I always in the damn bathroom? I was like, oh, because you're literally hiding there, right? That's like literally the thing that I've always done in my lifetime is come out from class, go to the bathroom, regardless of if you got to go or not, just to get away from the people. If you got to go to the locker, fine. If not, go to the next bathroom, closer to the next class, and hide again, right? And then once it's closer to class time, then go in class and don't have to worry about as many people focusing their attention on you, right? So it's literally just been hiding, right? So the means for getting any of that stuff out of my system is stop hiding, right? So stop hiding, process, release, let it be done. Yeah, and you know, I've talked on here a lot too about one of the most essential reasons for this is all these stories that I've told that make me sound like a nut job. It's essentially foundation building, right? So when I talk about it in a more concise and put together manner, and people are like, yeah, right, all I got to do is come back to my freaking channel and, hey, just look, universe will prove it if you want the universe to prove it for you. And then leave me the fuck alone about it, because, yeah, I'm used to the idea of sounding crazy. I talk about that a lot too, right? You know, and I've had to deal with that. I remember doing one video last year, I want to say May-ish, where I have been reading the Lives of the Stoics book. And the one that I had just read was, I don't know his name, but like the thing that it said about him, because it says the name, and then it says like the big, this one was the Challenger. And what happened was reading through that got me really uncomfortable, and I didn't know fully why. When I spent time in the video with it, it brought me back to this idea of being afraid to have my ideas or my views challenged, because I was afraid that I would appear stupid because I couldn't make sense of things. Because going back to that bit of collecting data, and I have a whole lot of information about a whole lot of different things, but trying to organize it concisely gets a little tricky, which is why I revisit the stories so many times, right? So, I mean, I don't know, probably hear some of the same stories several times in a short span of time, just because I'm trying to process through it and understand it to the level it's meant for me to understand it in that moment, right? So that one was confronting this fear of having these ideas challenged. Why? Because, okay, if I start talking to everybody in my existing life, or like this physical space, if I start talking about this twin flame stuff, that sounds kind of crazy. And I've talked about, like, Annie, the first time I went to that class, and I mentioned being on a twin flame path, and she said something about people get a lot of the information around twin flames wrong, and she needed to do have a class on that. And I remember just in that moment, it was like, if she does that class, I will not be here for it. Because it's like, I know this is very real for me, even if I sound crazy, especially if I sound crazy. And to listen to information about it from somebody that you already can tell doesn't believe it, or there's something about it that bothers them. And, largely that's going to be the fact that there are a lot of people that take this idea and take the idea that, people want love. And so they, make money on fucking people over just because they were gullible and wanted to believe in something, right? So it's like, I've talked about the different places I've gotten information, like Natural Mystic. I mentioned her at the beginning of this. There's Twin Flames 1111, Magnetize Yourself. There's one on Instagram, I think, called Eternal Devotion. And it's come up a few other places too. And it's one of those things, it's like, if something comes up and it's like, I feel like that has a message for me, then I will follow through with it. Otherwise, I don't think anybody is doing themselves any favors by tuning fully into what somebody else says. It's like that there's that intuitive piece. And if it's not your heart leading you through it and guiding the way, then you're more susceptible to having people that are out to, pull one over on you just to get something off of you, right? So like to make money off of you or whatever. And yeah. Anyway, it's the reason that I've made it through to this point in my life anyway. Because there was a whole lot that I needed to heal from. And all you got to do is see any of my videos to prove that, right? So, yeah. And I know I mentioned it in a video not that long ago where I said I felt like I needed to set that aside and kind of walk away from it. It's like, it's not wanting to be set aside and walked away from. And a large part of that, I think, is because when I've done that in the past, and like, I would get this idea, like the idea of wanting God to write my love story, right? Get real big on this idea, and then immediately have a whole bunch of stuff go wrong, and then take that to mean God's not actually going to do that, right? And one of the things that, okay, I try to avoid naming my ex at all costs, and this is probably, I think, I'm wanting to say this will be the first time I actually say his name, but the only reason I'm saying it now is because one of the things that stuck with me at the time I went into that connection was, his name's Zach, and I'm wanting to say that the name meaning for Zachary is God has remembered. I'm going to have to double check that, but I'm pretty confident that was the case. And that was one of those things that I used as, this is where I'm going, right? Because this means God has remembered. But in truth, yes, God remembered. God actually remembered a lot of things that I set for myself to learn, that I, had the intention to figure out how people got into toxic marriage situations and couldn't get out of. God remembered that too, right? So the way to teach you those lessons is to give you those experiences, right? So, name meanings have always been important to me. And I've always looked at, okay, like Sarah means princess. And I remember in high school when I wrote, like, it was for an English composition class for college credit, my senior year. We did this one writing thing where it had something to do with name meanings, right? Or I don't know if that was the assignment or if that was just my approach to the assignment, but my first name means princess. I think Lynn, essentially it's a body of water, but depending on what, on where you get the information, like one of the things that came up, was lake or, essentially it could be a puddle, a body of water, right? So what I did at that time was Princess of the Lake. And then I just kind of was like playing with this idea. But the thing that really stuck with me was, what if I find out that I set this whole thing up for myself, specifically leaving hints along the way, and like my name, meaning princess, was to remind me that, when I was going through this phase of, all this suicidal ideation and whatnot, that I did, like, that there was more importance to my existing than I was even capable of realizing, essentially. But I'm in an hour and 41 minutes, so I'm going to shut the fuck up now. And I can maybe continue this tomorrow. We'll have to see what this foot situation is like. I'm supposed to clean carpets at my aunt's house. I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do that. It might not be very fun. But yeah, the dog walking, the skating, and the running. Oh, man. But hey, riding. Have no excuses on the riding now. Aside from cleaning carpets tomorrow, but whatever. We'll make it happen. Anyways, I'm shutting up. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.